But for some breaking news, Chicago rapper Trey Savage shot and killed while driving in Chatham.
Rap scene was shot this morning on the city's south side.
Trey Savage's story was one of the very first viral moments we had last year in 2020.
For the majority of the morning on June 19th, 2020, Trey Savage was with his girlfriend. After spending time with her, Trey dropped her off at her destination, likely intending to carry on with the rest of his day. And as he began to drive through the Chatham neighborhood on Chicago's south side, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But in a split second, everything changed. As Trey pulled down the familiar street, an assailant emerged and opened fire on his vehicle. Bullets tore through the air, striking Trey. The sudden attack caused him to lose control of his car, which then crashed into 3 parked vehicles. The scene was chaotic, filled with the sound of screeching tires, shattered glass, and panicked voices as onlookers rushed to help.
Police say Savage was in the 8100 block of South Evans Avenue when he was shot in the neck and shoulder. His car continued to lunge forward, hitting 3 other cars before it stopped, partially off the ground. No one in custody at this hour.
Trey was quickly rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where doctors attempted to stabilize his condition. However, the injuries he sustained were too severe, and Trey Savage was pronounced deceased shortly after he arrived.
Savage was later pronounced at the hospital. Police do not have anyone in custody, but witnesses report seeing a white SUV in that area.
The news spread quickly through the community of Chicago as another young life was taken in a senseless act of violence. On June 30th, 2020, family, friends, and loved ones gathered to say their final goodbyes to Trey Young, better known as Trey Savage. Trey's life, filled with love, music, and ambition, was honored in a ceremony that brought together those who knew him best. Trey's girlfriend stood among those closest to him, mourning the loss of the man she had shared nearly a decade of her life with. As the farewell service came to a close, Trey was taken by horse-drawn carriage to his final resting place at Mount Hope Cemetery in Chicago, Illinois. The sad procession was a powerful reminder of the life he had lived and the impact he had made. Those who gathered at the cemetery reflected on the man who had risen from the streets of Chicago to make his mark in the world of music, only to be taken too soon. As news of the tragedy spread, social media became a place of mourning and reflection. Fellow artists, fans, and friends expressed their grief and disbelief, recognizing the loss of yet another young life to the streets. Fans of Trey Savage flooded social media with tribute and messages of sorrow. Many reflected on the recurring gruesomeness that had plagued the rap community, with one fan lamenting, "Crazy how almost everyone in GBE is gone." His passing became a notable story, shared widely across platforms like Twitter and Instagram, with fans, peers, and news outlets discussing the ongoing feud in Chicago and the loss of young talent. The aftermath of Trey Savage's passing was felt deeply across the rap community and beyond. Lil Durk, a prominent voice in the Chicago rap scene, was among the first to react. He took to Twitter with a somber message: "These streets cold-blooded. Rest up, Savage." His words resonated with many, highlighting the harsh reality of life in the neighborhoods that shaped Trey's music and identity. Trey Savage's manager, Idris Dykes, also spoke out, offering a more personal reflection. He described Trey as a great brother to Chief Keef and the rest of their Glow Gang family. Dykes emphasized Trey's dedication to his music and family, painting a picture of a young man who was committed to his craft and the people he loved. He was always looking for a positive outcome, Dykes shared, expressing that Savage's life was cut short as it was beginning to flourish. Raised in the heart of Chicago's South Side, Trey was no stranger to life's challenges in one of the city's most dangerous areas. Trey's path to recognition began when he linked up with Chief Keef, one of the pioneers of the Chicago drill music scene. Trey Savage was a member of the original Glory Boys group, which hails from the south side of Chicago, and the Glow Gang group that it evolved into. Glow Gang quickly became synonymous with Chicago's gritty and raw drill scene. The glow in Glow Gang refers to the flashy, confident, and unapologetic persona that its members embrace, both in their music and their day-to-day lives. Tracks like Know Who I Am and Faces earned Savage a dedicated following, particularly among those who saw their own lives mirrored in his words. He was also well known for his 2013 collaboration with Keef, Chief and Keef. Savage was also a known member of the Black Disciples gang. The streets of Chicago have long been shaped by the presence of powerful and dangerous gangs, none more notorious than the Black Disciples. As a member of Chief Keef's Glow Gang, Trey's music often reflected the harsh realities of life in the streets, where loyalty to the gang could mean the difference between life and afterlife. His alleged affiliation with the Black Disciples placed him at the intersection of music and gang culture, where the lines between artistic expression and real-life situations are often blurred. However, the same streets that fueled Trey's rise to fame also posed the greatest threat to his life. Despite his growing success, Trey Savage remained closely connected to his roots, never entirely distancing himself from the dangers of his environment. This connection ultimately led to his tragic passing on June 19th, 2020, when he was shot and hit in the very neighborhood he had spent his life representing. So some wondered if the shooting was related to the street business. In the days following Trey Savage's tragic passing, the Chicago Police Department launched an intensive investigation to uncover the truth behind the shooting. Initial reports indicate that Trey had been targeted while driving in the Chatham neighborhood, but the identity of the shooter remained a mystery. Witnesses at the scene described a white SUV, possibly a Mazda, speeding away from the crime scene. The vehicle was last seen on Cottage Grove Avenue. However, details beyond that were scarce, and the case seemed to be at a standstill. However, as the investigation progressed, crucial evidence began to surface.
A lot of people have had eyes on this situation and wondered, would anybody ever be caught? Well, it looks like there's a suspect in this case that was caught out of state and arrested and is being extradited back to Chicago to face trial for Trey Savage.
Security footage from a nearby convenience store captured an encounter between Trey Savage and a man later identified as Dimitri Jackson. The footage shows the two interacting shortly before the shooting, with Jackson driving a white Mazda SUV. Approximately 15 minutes later, Trey was shot as he attempted to drive away from the block where they had previously met. His girlfriend rushed to the car and pulled him from the driver's seat. Savage was then taken to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where he was pronounced deceased. The investigation took a significant turn when authorities linked Jackson to the crime through this footage. His unmasked face, along with a distinctive limp from a previous gunshot wound, made him identifiable in the video. However, as details of their relationship emerged, the tragedy took on an even darker tone. Jackson and Trey Savage knew one another before the shooting, but more than that, rumor on the street is that they had grown up together, their lives intertwined from an early age. Yet, this connection would ultimately lead to be a fatal betrayal.
But to a friend, bro, over like that's crazy, bro.
Allegedly, Jackson owed Trey Savage a significant amount of money, a debt that had been lingering between them. On that fateful day, Jackson reportedly reached out to Trey, asking him to come over under the pretense of finally settling the debt. The two men spoke briefly, and Trey began to leave. But just as he was about to drive away for good, Jackson called him back, as if ready to hand over the money.
It's one shit, but Trey Savage trying to get his money back that he put the guy on, you know what I'm saying? He loaded him up. He hustling for him while he out of town. That's how you do your homies. You put your homie on. But instead he paying that little money to him, you know what I'm talking about? He thought it was better off that Trey Savage was dead, bro.
What happened next was a calculated act. Jackson returned to his car and moved it into the middle of the street, blocking Trey's car. Jackson then stepped out and started shooting, striking Trey in the neck and shoulder. Trey's car lurched forward, crashing into a parked car before coming to a stop. The scene inside the vehicle was gruesome, with blood-stained money scattered across the dashboard. The police investigation pieced together these events through security footage, witness statement, and forensic evidence. Jackson's white Mazda SUV, seen fleeing the scene, was found burned the next day, an obvious attempt to destroy evidence. Nearly a year later, in April 2021, Demetri Jackson was arrested in Fort Worth, Texas, on a hit warrant. He was extradited to Chicago, where he faced charges for the hit of Trey Savage. During his initial court appearance, the prosecution laid out the evidence against Jackson. They detailed how security footage from a nearby convenience store had captured an encounter between Jackson and Trey Savage just minutes before the shooting. The footage, combined with eyewitness reports and the discovery of Jackson's burned SUV, formed the backbone of the case against him. Prosecutors argued that Jackson, who was identified on camera by his distinctive limp, had fired the fatal shot that took Trey Savage's life. Prosecutors didn't offer a motive for the June 19th shooting, saying only the two were affiliated by the same gang faction. At his bail hearing, Judge David R. Navarro denied Jackson bail, citing the severity of the charges and the potential for a life sentence if sentenced. Jackson's defense attorney argued that he had cooperated with authorities and had only left Chicago due to the passing of his grandmother. Still, the judge remained firm in the decision to deny bail. Trey was a deeply family-oriented person, and his loss was profoundly felt by those who were close to him. Trey Savage, whose real name was Contray Young, left behind his girlfriend, Breon Shelly Big Red Manny, and their two children, Amir Young and Amira Young. Rest in peace, Trey Savage.